So we have this panel today. We're going to talk about how to build worldwide communities.
In mathematics communication. So the panel today, you probably know everyone, but just in case, you have Montserrat Alsina there, hello, Cindy Lawrence, Andreas Matt, and Cyrielle Valet. Yes, I didn't say the... So Montserrat from Universitat Politècnica de Catalunya, Cindy Lawrence from National Museum of Mathematics, and Andreas from Imaginary, and Cyrielle from Institut Henri Poincaré Endowment Fund. So we're going to start with everyone presenting a bit their different networks, and we start with you, Andreas.
Okay, I'll let you all think what does it mean to be a worldwide community and how to build it. My own personal experience from the very beginning of the very first Imaginary exhibition in 2007, we decided, because there were a lot of requests, and it was easier for us to do everything under open licenses. You imagine 2007, it was not very common at that time. It's still becoming more and more common, at least in science. So I think this was a step that started to build communities in the way that suddenly mathematicians didn't have to create the exhibits on themselves. They just had to organize the exhibitions. And so far we had 550 exhibitions that were organized with the content that we created. Content was adapted and changed and altered all the time, but this built a community among exhibition organizers. It built a community that they knew each other. Sometimes they exchanged, sometimes they did not. Like Spain and Portugal did a lot of exhibitions. They didn't talk that much, but others helped each other. So it was very interesting. But then it kind of vanished a little bit. After they did the exhibitions or exhibition tours, they are here, some of them or not. But so we thought, okay, like we create exhibits, others also create exhibits under open licenses, so let's start a platform. This was back in 2012, 2013, so we started the imagine.org platform where everybody can just upload, share. Here you see the most successful format of exhibits, which is images. A lot of people are using these images because it's very high resolution, completely openly licensed, very mathematical exhibition of pictures with explanations and instructions how to mount them. So, but there you can also upload software-based exhibits, physical exhibits, building manuals, even text, whatever is there. We pushed it quite a lot in 2012 and 13. People were uploading more or less. They were always in touch with us, but it didn't become like a GitHub. You know, at that time there was no GitHub. So for math communication exhibits. We started another project in 2014, which we ran for 4 years, the Math Communication Network, which was a newsletter series, 3, 4, 5 times a year, where we just wanted to share what's happening in the math communication world. There's a new museum there, there's a conference happening there, there's a new European project there. We started with a lot of enthusiasm, but then it was us doing it all the time. At one point, we lost a little bit the energy. I don't even know if you knew about that newsletter, if you were subscribed. So we stopped that. There was also no funding, so we did it just because we had the information and it felt like nicely to share it. And then we started at one point in 2016, this was part of a conference idea, to start a Wikipedia page on mathematics communication. So we said, okay, let's collect everything that's happening, all the players, all the projects, all the museums, everything on one Wikipedia page. It's open, everybody can edit it. I'm sure it will work because the community is going to add all the information. We have a very nice database of everything and it's really cool. We put some time, it also didn't really launch. It's still there and it's really nice. We kept up the map of math museums. That's also the most requested one. We kept it more or less updated. So if you want to know that, I don't know if you know about the new Miami Math Museum. Yeah, so it's always new museums coming up that maybe some people even don't know that it's coming up in your own country. You know? So we try to put them up there. And now lately, it was the European Math Society had the idea to start the PopMath project. Maybe you saw the little pins that we put into your bag. So it's an event calendar where we try to put a lot of technology inside. It's like an Airbnb kind of website technology where you can zoom into the world and see the events popping up, and you can also choose, I want an event close to my house. So everybody can just share outreach events in mathematics on that platform. It also, I think it's also not known. So in a way, it's kind of, you have the resources, you have the platform, but you also need for this big project, you need a lot of people to contribute. At the same time, so this is like I'm not frustrated. I really like this project. But at the same time, the community is building on its own. It's building with the conferences, and we know each other. And it's so that you have this kind of automatic building on one hand, and then you have this kind of somebody has an idea to establish a resource, establish a communication channel, establish like a conference, a journal, whatever that brings that, like gives the community building a base. And like I think the discussion of today is like what do we need? What should we push? What should we decide something? Should we just let it go? Like we are also part of the community, so we can act. And I think that's it's a crazy, open, nice question. Thank you.
Thank you. And talking about resources, we created a document with, I want to say all the things, but most of the things that are happening, and also lots of initiatives in math communication. I'm going to show you the QR code again at the end of the presentation, so you can look at it and also edit it. If something is missing, you can add it, and you're going to add it to the wiki page as well, right? Yeah. If it's not there. Thank you. Cindy?
Okay. Okay, well, you've heard from me before, but in case anybody wasn't here on the first 2 days, my name is Cindy. I'm the director of the National Museum of Mathematics, known as MoMath in New York City. I'm proudly wearing my 10-year shirt. This is our 10th year of operation. We'll have our 10-year anniversary on 12/12/22. We did open on 12/12/12. That couldn't be a better date than that to open. And we've been all about building a community since we opened. All of the ideas for our exhibits came from mathematicians. There was a wiki, and we said, if you have a great idea for a math exhibit, let us know. And it turns out that mathematicians very often love what they do, but feel like they can't explain what they do to people around the corner or even their own families if they're not also mathematicians. And so our goal was to find the really cool bits of mathematics and find a way to communicate some part of that to the general public. And so we built a museum in New York City, and the slides you see now are all some of the exhibits. And again, these all came from mathematicians around the world who submitted ideas to us, which we then, with the help of a great exhibit designer, Tim Nissen, who's here today, turned into things that were fun and engaging, colorful, collaborative, exciting, fun. These are words that people don't usually associate with mathematics. So part of our goal was to bring the joy of math to people that don't think about math as joyful. But the other part of our goal was to be a hub, to be a network where people could come together. One thing that will make sense to people is that many people, when they're young, think they might want to be an astronaut, right? That sounds like a cool thing to be. And most of us don't become astronauts. But if you really love looking at the sky and the stars and the moon, you can join an amateur astronomy club, and you can get together with other people, and you can go out and see cool things in the night sky as they appear. But a lot of people also liked math when they were kids and didn't end up becoming mathematicians. And so in some way, MoMath is like the amateur club for people who love math and still want to connect with real mathematics and mathematicians, even if they're not doing that in their day-to-day life. So MoMath existed as a hub, as a place to connect. We also started 2 conferences early on. We had a meeting with a number of mathematicians, including Tim Chartier, who headed up our first advisory council. And we asked the mathematicians, what would you like, the nation's only museum of mathematics at the time, what would you like us to do? How would you like us to connect with you and your community? And there were 2 ideas that surfaced. One was a conference maybe on recreational mathematics, which is something that didn't exist at that time, had existed years ago. And the other was to do something for Pi Day, because everybody loves pi. But ultimately, we went with the conference. And that conference called MOVES is still running every other year. And then we also started going to Science Center conferences, because we view math museums, at least the way we have them, as part of the Science Center community. And while those were really interesting, math was absent. Or if math was present, it was just a tool, an equation used to solve a scientific problem. And so we had the idea to try and start a conference that would be for math museums, people who want to open math museums, people doing math outreach. So it's very much a pleasure to see all of you here today. We don't just do things in the museum, though, because we discovered that another way to build community is to do large-scale public events. And so you see lots of pictures there I will point out on the top left, that is Sergio from MMACA. You see Guido? You have to take a picture and send that to him. He came and did a wonderful event at MoMath. There's a picture that's kind of overhead. That's our very first foray into public math events. That was the World Science Festival in June 2009. Picture toward the lower left that looks like a big gymnasium. That was the Pi Day of the century, and we had many people celebrate that with us. The picture on the right where people are holding glowing sticks. I think we did the largest ever demonstration that the Pythagorean theorem is actually true. It turns out the Flatiron Building in New York City is a right triangle, and so you could do something fun around that, which we did on December 5th, 2013, which some of you will recognize why that makes sense for a Pythagorean event. So large-scale public events bring people together, exhibits bring people together, but actually it wasn't until the pandemic that we really grew our community into something that is very worldwide. On March 12th, 2020, we had our very last in-person visitors to the museum for what would be more than a year of shutdown. Also on March 12th, 2020, we had our first online school field trip. So we were ready, and we had our last field trip and our first online field trip the same day. And at this point, our programs attract people from 126 different countries around the world. We are counting. And that has been really a wonderful experience for us. And especially during the pandemic, we had people who were shuttered at home, some people who were living alone, elderly people, people with children who were not able to participate fully in Zoom school somehow seemed to like our programs. And so while the pandemic has been a tragedy for many of us, the silver lining is that I think it did bring us together as a math community even more. So being here with all of you is just another step in developing and increasing this worldwide community of people that love math and want to share that joy and beauty with the world. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Cindy. Cyrielle?
Yes. Thank you. Can you hear me well? No? Alexandre a pas dû le mettre. Ok. Vas-y. So, hi. So unlike Andreas and Cindy with Matrix and Imaginary, I'm not going to talk about networks and communities composed only of mathematicians, physicists, or students only, because it's mainly the role of IHP to interact and provide contents for these audiences. What we do at the IHP Endowment Fund is mainly fundraising, and I'm responsible for fundraising and communication. So the Endowment Fund was created in 2016 to raise funds only from the private sector. And we fund projects in science outreach and education, such as the Maison Poincaré. And in doing so, we've been constituting networks of donors, sponsors, and individuals and sponsor companies who grant mostly financial support to these projects. So the people who are joining our networks, they share the same objective, which is making the project happen. We've been building these networks before the opening and running of this new science center, the Maison Poincaré, because the Maison Poincaré is to open in next year, early 2023. So currently, the IHP Endowment Fund is supporting the Maison Poincaré permanent exhibition, while the building renovation is public funded, such as also the IHP is a public funded institution. So when we want to raise funds, we have different approaches depending on the public. Obviously, we get in touch with companies, philanthropic individuals, and we try to convince them to become sponsors of our project. They usually grant us major gifts and become members of a special club. So far, we've been creating 2 different clubs, one for sponsor companies and the other one for philanthropic individuals. We also launch crowdfunding campaigns. You may probably know what crowdfunding campaigns, but anyway, they are participatory campaigns everyone can support with smaller gifts. So we've done 3 short crowdfunding campaigns from 2017 to 2020. And there is a 4th one, a long-term one, campaign on the Maison Poincaré. It's still running, and you can find on the screen there are 2 QR codes. If you want to make a donation, it's not too late. So the pink I have to do it. So the pink one is the QR code that leads you to the crowdfunding campaign to support the whole project, and the beige one, there's the beige one, is to support the realization of the symbol of this new science center, which is the great Rulpidon. Sorry for my accent. And those crowdfunding campaigns, the objective is to talk to a general audience. So we want more people to be aware of IHP, its mission, and to create enthusiasm around the Maison Poincaré project outside the scientific community. So our objective is that individuals can feel concerned about the project, can feel they belong to a community, and that they can get involved in that community and in the project. Since 2016, the Endowment Fund has raised more than 2 million euros, and most of this funding went to the realization of the Maison Poincaré permanent exhibition, including Holomath. Adrien presented you on the first day Holomath, which is an innovative device allowing a group immersive experience in mathematical concepts guided by an explainer. So, but the Endowment Fund also supported exhibits realized by other associations within IHP network, such as the Maison des Maths et de l'Informatique. You had the presentation this morning with Olivier, and the Pharmasciences, also in the Toulouse region. And they are both involved in science outreach, obviously.
Thank you, Cyrielle. Montse, yeah.
Okay, so at this point, I want to point out that, for example, we need to put different elements, but they need to operate together. So, for example, I'm representing, in some sense, a museum that it's MMACA. You know very well, so it's more than a museum and was organizer of Matrix 2018 and has international connections, so I'm not going to tell a lot about that. And I'm also responsible of one mathematical society in my country, where there are a lot of activities also run by societies, and this is an example also the Mathematical Society in France and other places. So institutions are also neat, and also publications. And for example, the Kangur, that it's a contest that somebody was talking that implies more than 100,000 students. So, but besides of that, I'm gonna add to this panel the point of view of universities, because we need people, right? And so there are a lot of people interested in mathematics. We love mathematics. We devote our life to mathematics, and we are some at this conference. But at universities, we are very busy also doing research and outreach that can be connected, that was talking this morning, but we have also teaching. So our idea is to involve at the university to get more people to engage students. So why? So let's focus on university students, math outreach, and service learning experience. So why? Because this is a game, it's not a symmetry, right? So students are the future. So we are going to do outreach now, but we want a lot of people doing outreach more years in the future. So we are interested in math, of course, but there are a lot of people using math that then can discover math and communicate. So, for example, STEM degrees. So we have been talking about computer science and so on that are interested also. And also about teaching, there is a big movement to evolve to more a student-centered experience. So service learning, I'm not sure if you know about that. It's to learn through experience doing a service. And outreach, it's a service to the society. Because university, we need to return back to the society what we learn So I think that putting this together can really work. So let me give you some examples. For example, we took students, and the first job was to organize workshops for the students, for math school, and so it's like, sorry, it's like to see bigger here. Okay. So they organized. So this was the first step, but then they need to think about, and so we need to organize more things to train them. So at the second row, what you can see is a couple of image groups of students training. So it's similar to Ellen was talking about Pasa University and so on. So it's very important to organize training for undergrad students. Next step was really to put them in touch with communicators. So we organized 2 editions of training sessions for the students with people who used to be in the TV, with writers, so with professionals in communications. That was fantastic. We enjoy a lot. And the last step was that they apply this, what they learn at the training session, they apply guiding teachers. So they do training teachers because, for example, for primary schools, what happens is teachers does not feel mathematics. So grad students really help with that. And also they were in festivals presenting. So this was really fantastic, and we hope that we can do this more times. And another example is just to use, for example, some subjects that work as a project, or the final thesis, a final project that is required now in most of universities. And we ask them to build, to be creators of modules. So this is a couple of examples of maquette, and the image is so few, but you can see there that there is an explanation for the first level, a second level, but also the formula. So we don't need to hide mathematics. Mathematics are there. So we can apply, but we can use with the real formulas. And the second one, it's the hands-on modules that I was presenting in the bazaar, also like an example. And this is the student in mechanical engineering interested in math. And he discovered that math are more than just apply formulas. So because math are creative, you need to think, you need to argue, and so I think this is one thing that from universities can work also. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So we're going to start asking questions and discussing with the panel. If you have any questions, we noticed yesterday you enjoyed AHA slides and emojis and asking questions. So we're going to... we're going to go, yeah, you passed. So we're going to go back on AHA slides. So this is the QR code to join. If you have any questions, you can either raise your hand, or if you want to just write it and not ask it, orally, you can do that. If you want to send some love with the emojis, you can also do it. And while you're connecting, the first question is for Andreas and Cindy. What are the 2 differences of your networks? What are the specificities?
Well, we have one physical home, and I think that's maybe less true for you. Is that, would you say?
I mean, it's the same planet, and I feel like we are in a way not like there was the museum definition, but I feel like we are in, I don't know, 50 museums. You have only one.
Yeah,
but
this is what I mean.
But it's yours. But it feels nicer to have it like distributed. Yeah.
So I think we're more centralized, and imaginary is more decentralized. Might be a way to say that.
Yeah, but it's also maybe the way of resources. I think you have a very strong focus towards New York and towards your activities, and we also have a focus on ourselves. But I think the platforms that I showed are for the community in a way. So the idea was like to set up an infrastructure that the community can use,
a lot of love
like the
coming
conference, But here's also the question: do we need to push such an infrastructure, or does it grow on its own? And I'm observing this because, like, for 15 years, I'm trying to push a little bit, and then it goes forward, then it dies again, then it goes forward. I think in general, on the average, the math communication, like the science communication field, is booming a lot. We have, I don't know, 50 math museums in the world. That's an example there. I think 6 or 7 regular math communication conferences. I don't know if you know that there's many more, and even older ones than Matrix and Imaginary, like the CMSC conferences, where they used a lot of computer science unplugged. That whole community is doing their own regular conferences, for example. So it's really interesting, but then it's also a question of exchange. Yeah.
I think too that we are very, in a way, have been very local, and we're a neighborhood museum where people come from the neighborhood, and that's maybe a little bit different. Also, I think Imaginary does a really great job, as you saw with IMAI, with the digital, and we maybe don't do it in quite the same way. Although we do have one exhibit that is a collaboration in our museum.
And it's open license too.
Yeah,
the
and
only one you
it's
have.
very popular exhibit called Formula Morph. So I think there are actually more similarities than differences. And certainly we're both motivated with a similar mission.
Yeah. And it,
Yeah, so just to add one thing, because I think we don't need to talk about difference, but we are complementary in some sense, right? So we need museums that need to be local because communities need to be local. And if we want hands-on and physical, need to be ubicated in some place. But we also need creators and big platforms like that. I think, as I said, when I talk, are really very complementary things. Also the people, the university, the funds, institutions, everything is complementary. So I think we need to work together as a GR to operate, but also as parallel force. So and then we are pushing in the same direction. So force are adding, energies are adding, so it will be nice.
Also, even just in the 10 years that we've been operating, there are so many new museums, many of you represented here, that are starting in their own communities, and we all support each other, and that's part of the purpose of this conference. But it's wonderful to look out and see, there's people here from Poland that are working to start a museum of math. I remember when MMACA was just getting started. We're working with a group in Tel Aviv that want to open a math museum. We've worked with people in Pakistan and many other countries. So and of course in the United States as well, we've got Seattle represented here. So it's just wonderful to see the growth and to realize this is like what science centers were a number of years ago. The first science center opened in Israel, and then somebody from the US came to Israel and saw that and said, wow, we should have that in the United States. And that sort of started a boom. And now very many cities have science centers. And so I hope that this is the start of the same for museums of mathematics.
Yeah, Andreas, you talked about stuff that worked and didn't work. So could you share, all of you, your successes? Maybe we're going to start with positive. And also, some questions are coming on the screen if you want to look at it.
I mean, I think the biggest success that goes to all of us here and all the other people around is that mathematics communication is strong, and it's growing, and it's extending to many regions. If you look at it on the planet, like the first ever mathematics exhibition have happened in 15 African countries. In many places there were exhibitions in Panama and whatever. It's like whole countries like Uruguay did exhibitions all over the country, where half of the population has attended a mathematics exhibition. So I think that's a big success in general, and I think that's something that we cannot stop. Even if if you turn off all the museums, probably they will come up again. No? So it's like we definitely past the line, like a tipping line of community. But then the question is, what is the next step? I mean, it's still this. We still have this. I think that's also we are very good friends, no? But I still that's also this tension of like more commercial forms of like patenting exhibits and selling them, which you need to fundraise, and then you like on the other side the completely open licensed exhibits that you can share. So it's a question, like, of course you need everything, and it runs in parallel. But maybe at one point you can decide, let's decide the journal that Georges mentioned yesterday. Let's all publish in recreational mathematics, and let's make it the math communication journal. I was always thinking, okay, there is no journal for math communication. Let's start one, but there is one. As an example, no? sorry, or I don't know, or let's use this one resource exchange, let's use this conference, or but then at the same time we also need the small places. We need it in all different languages. We need it also in French and in Spanish, and otherwise it would not work. So but sorry, and so I think the big success is that even we cannot stop it anymore. And the question now is like, where do we control it now? What's the next gear? Like, should we start like a Discord channel? Okay, sorry. I leave the word to.
So I see a question on the screen that I think is really important to address in the bottom center about focusing on gender, minorities. I can't read the rest of it, but I see inclusive, social gap, okay, and being inclusive. And that's something that is really important to us, and anyone who's from the United States knows that this has been a very big issue in the United States that has come to the forefront in the last couple of years. And it's very hard to do this when the vast majority of mathematicians are still white, male, cis. And so one of the things that we're trying very hard to do is sort of force representation where we can. And so, for example, on our exhibit decks, we have, so for every exhibit, there's a computer screen that talks about the exhibit, the math, and also the people behind it. And the vast majority of those people are white men. But we actually took the time and we just got creative, and we found women whose work is even peripherally related to the work of what's featured in the exhibit. And now if a young girl walks around the museum and pushes people, she will see women. They may be only peripherally related, but that doesn't matter. And another thing that we're trying to do, although fundraising is not easy, so we haven't been funded for this yet, but we think it's really important for young people to see people that look like them, that they can identify with, whether that's race or gender or any other diverse type of characteristic. But not everybody in the world of mathematics is good at public outreach, right? So everyone here is, but you probably all know mathematicians that can't talk about their work with the public. And so one of the things that we would like to do is start a training program where we will identify at the graduate school level people of diverse backgrounds and teach them, have them come to our museum where we've been doing this for 10 years and workshop with us and leave with a speech, a presentation in their back pocket that they could go back to their communities and deliver. So we may not be able to create overnight a diverse world of mathematicians, but if we can train some young up-and-coming mathematicians to be able to speak in their communities, we feel like that would make a difference. So I think this is a big issue for us as a community.
Yeah. So I think it's really very, very important, and this is one of the reasons I encourage people to spread this at their own universities and so on, because universities, especially public universities, has a commitment with the society. So this morning, we have been these nice models about climate change, about the artificial intelligence and so on. So, but who is going to access to this model? So our university now is realizing, and it's taking data. So of course, women are necessary, but also it's necessary to go approach to these neighborhoods that are socially on the bottom. And so one initiative that we have been done, it's use libraries. So public libraries is usually a resource, a network that it's in all countries, more or less. We have underdeveloped also. But even in our countries, there are people who is making bad. So use libraries, and to put special math activities there, it's also one nice idea that can be helpful.
So to come back to our successes, I think Cyrielle, you have one to share?
So yeah, regarding the IHP Endowment Fund, one of our successes might be the creation of the Corporate Patrons Club. It's been created in 2015, to gather sponsor companies that granted financial support to support the IHP, its mission, and since the last 4 years, the Maison Poincaré permanent exhibition. So we have constructed strong relationships, with these companies. They have been reliable partners to come to the realization of the Maison Poincaré permanent exhibition, and some are still willing to support us once the Science Center is open. And we are trying to engage them in a 3-year sponsorship agreement, because it's easier for the project to know that they can count on fundings for the next 3 years. So it is one of our successes. But also, if we are regarding smaller donors, we have created a community of smaller donors we call builders of the Maison Poincaré, les bâtisseurs de la Maison Poincaré. And what we're trying to do with them is to involve them, because it is the identity of the Maison Poincaré project, not to talk only to researchers, but to talk to everybody, so that everyone can feel interested and can feel concerned and can come to the Maison Poincaré when it's open.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cindy. I just want to add one success for us has been, so in the United States, as opposed to maybe other countries, university professors are not really encouraged to do math outreach, and they're encouraged to publish and publish and publish and research. And with the support of the Simons Foundation, and Yvette is here, there she is in the back representing the Simons Foundation, MoMath was able to create a 1-year visiting professorship, and we've now had, this is our 5th year, we have Tim Chartier who's with us, but we started with Manjul Bhargava, a Fields medalist from Princeton University, and that immediately set the tone that other universities took notice, and everyone we've asked to come, their universities have been very excited to send them, because we've set a tone now that this is actually a worthwhile thing to do. Even if you're a Fields medalist doing top-level research, it's worthwhile to share what you're doing with the general public. And so I think that's a very big success, and our thanks go to the Simons Foundation and to the professors like Tim who have visited, because we've been able to reach so many people who are so excited about talking to a real mathematician, a successful mathematician, even learning what a mathematician does. To all of us, we know. But most people, they wonder, what is math research, right? Because isn't calculus discovered already? Like, what else is there beyond calculus? And this is the way the general world views mathematics. And so we're trying to change that. And I'm very happy that this visiting professor program has been a tremendous success for us.
Yeah, and I think that a success is that things are changing, because, so from some European grants, and every time PhD are asked to do some outreach. So in our country, for example, from the government, they say that the university has 4 legs. And so one leg, it's commitment, social commitment, so outreach. So, and then we say, okay, but this can be nice words, but with words, we cannot be paid. So we asked to put money on that, and the Spanish Agency for Evaluation of University Professors say there is a mathematician, Mercedes Siles, that is a mathematician who is in charge now of all the evaluation agency, and she said that she's going to put money and to put recognition of points and so on for that. So we hope that this is a success in the sense that people was doing pressure, and we hope at some point it will work.
It's a great transition to challenges, actually.
Can I just add
Thank
one,
you. Yes,
one sentence,
yeah.
because we're talking about money, and I don't know if you have seen this in the program. Originally, this panel was about funding and math communication, but it was difficult to get the right people. But it's, I think the money part is always there, and maybe talking about successes, I think there has never been so many independent mathematics communicators ever that live of math communication professionally by whatever fund, like is it like a government funding or because they get funding for their performances, whatever. I think UK is probably the country where you have most of them. They just live of math communication, and we are non-profit, we don't have any base funding, and we live of math communication professionally. And this is also increasing, be it governmental funding, university funding, and that's also a big success. And that's the base we need to survive on the long term. And for that, we need all the players on board. So I'll switch to the challenges. Money is a challenge. It's a good keyword.
Yeah,
maybe.
money is a challenge. It felt like when you were presenting, you had some challenges as well. You were saying, come and goes.
Yeah.
So what were the main ones?
I think one challenge is this kind of expectation versus reality in a way. So like you come up with this great idea and you're fully enthusiastic. We build this big hub and everybody can share exhibits and it's changing the world. And then you realize after 3 years you're losing a little bit of energy and not the world is not putting events on PopMath. It's the nicest platform, but people maybe don't want to put their events online because they don't need that. But I want to collect them all. So with the challenge of really, I don't know, I expect that everybody really wants to share, but at the end they don't. Or everybody wants to collaborate because it's an open platform, but they don't do in the way I would expect. But then at the same time you have to say, okay, but it's still running in a way, and maybe it's a bit too early, or it's still a good service. But I think that's a challenge.
And Cindy, yeah.
I would echo funding as a challenge, especially now with the inflation. We were very lucky in a way during the pandemic that our board was very supportive of our continuing to do programming. So I think we were the only museum in New York that did no layoffs, did not cut people's pay, did not put people on furlough. And instead, we were able to turn all of our efforts toward doing online programming. But we were closed. We had no revenue other than the support of our donors. So we were lucky to be able to do that. But now that we're reopened again, the crowds have not returned yet. The schools have not returned yet. Inflation in New York, probably everywhere in the world, but in New York has been incredibly high. And so we're challenged by wanting to continue. So many people appreciated the free programming. And how do we continue that now that everything costs more? Rent costs more, utilities, staffing. And so that's, I think, our biggest challenge is how to close that gap.
Montse, Andreas, you want to say something?
There are many challenges.
Sorry, Montse.
No, there's this one challenge, maybe also an interesting topic about who is behind one particular service or a particular conference. Is it like one actor, or should it be a more independent international body in a way? And I think we are on the brink of becoming more like that. We build up an infrastructure that works independent from the individual players, because there's this kind of thing of trust. You know, you think, okay, but I'm putting this, I'm making an exhibit, but it's only for that museum, or it's the conference of that organization. So I think that's also like we are on the brink of making things a little bit more independent. So it's really, it feels like the community owns that service and not one particular player. But here, of course, you have the funding and somebody has to maintain it in a way. And then, but I think we are on the brink of establishing some more international, it will take a couple of years, the next idea which will work or not, you know.
In the past, every time we ran the Matrix conference, there was maybe one organization that came up and said, we'll host the next one. Maybe one year there was none and we had to look a little harder. And there are 3 different groups that have offered to host in 2 years. And so we'll get you more information as it firms up, but it's wonderful to be able to say with good assurance that we will be meeting again in 2 years.
Nice. Nice.
And trying to add something what Andreas said. So I also think that perhaps we need to explode more some actors like institutions, but I'm not talking about governments. That we can ask them funds, but they are mathematical societies that are made by people. At least is my experience in Catalonia, for example. So people who join to be the Catalan Mathematical Society are always volunteer and always that. But this is like a frame for all mathematical activities and so on. So I think they can support, they were supporting museum, they were supporting things. So not to control, but to give this framework. So we have by one side governments to funds and something, we have universities, but we have this kind of associations. And in this sense, there are also in some countries associations by teachers of secondary and primary school. If they are organized, they are really very strong to support things. And so this is the experience and a success in our country.
So Cyrielle, I think, wanted to... Yes.
Just to add on our own challenges at the IHP Endowment Fund. So obviously we suffered the consequences of the COVID crisis because gathering were alone for a long time, and you know that fundraising is basically relationships. So if you can't see people, you can get money. But we also have some companies who couldn't re-engage because of the consequences also of the COVID crisis, because they had to do some cuts in their capacity or their budget regarding sponsoring. I'm going to talk about a challenge that is more cultural and related to fundraising in particular, because in France we have a very different culture of fundraising regarding the one in comparison with the one we can find in the UK or in the US. So it's quite difficult to engage people so that they can give you, because they are already giving to many causes, or they don't see the giving as a way of as Americans see it. So it's a long-term effort if you want to engage them. So that point, it's very important to see the difference. If we don't manage to get so many gifts as in the US, it's because we have this culture, but not only in France, in Europe in general, really.
Maybe adding to the challenge of fundraising, and very often you fundraise for yourself. But we are talking about community, so we would have to fundraise for the community. The good example is I always try to push that for these conferences, we need at least 30, 40, 50,000 euro to invite math communicators that cannot afford themselves to come because they're independent. They cannot just afford to not work for 1 week and the travel costs and everything. Their regions, they would not come. You have to apply for a visa. So, but that's something that we have to fundraise for them. But even the fundraising for yourself is already a challenge. And now imagine fundraising for the community, but maybe there are some ideas to do that. But I think it's very important, yeah.
There is one question on it, actually. Would joint fundraising efforts be more effective compared to individual efforts?
Yeah, that's another thing, yeah.
Andreas, but the difference is that people are more interested in funding health, social care, or those things that math outreach. It's not like education, it's not the topic, the top topic, if you could say it, that interests people, really.
And in terms of joining, I mean, the European Union projects, there are many of them, and so that kind of works. So we have 4 or 5 partners joining hands to applying for a project. I've never seen, has there been like 5 museums together fund an exhibition? I've not seen this in the math museums world. It exists in the other museums world. That's in the science museums, but I haven't seen this, for example, or might be good. I don't know if it's easier. Yeah. Funding very often for us, it's also, every country is so different. In Germany, it's like the foundations. It's a big foundation country, so you will always work with foundations, and the foundations, many of them just fund in their own country. They do some exceptions sometimes, but it's very, and then you also have to build up trust and the network. They would not fund an exhibition in Paris. It would not work that well.
We have one question there.
So I understand that people maybe say education is secondary after health, social care, etc., and social inequality, but we can connect it and we can be explicit about that. For example, we organize, I will talk in my talk about this, but the school we organize for girls in Marseille, we want to attract girls who don't come. Usually we have girls whose father is an engineer, mother is a professor, and usually of mathematics, and other girls, they don't come. And there are many reasons why, but when we speak to the city hall, for example, of Marseille, they say we have special funds for some parts of the city where if the girls come from these parts, we will give you money. So if the mathematical education is not only about joy of discovering platonic solids, but also about giving opportunities to people, this also will bring us help from outside of the mathematical community. And I believe that we should reunite ourselves with other issues. To give a couple examples, if we have an exhibition on climate change, 10 Minutes Museum, we can nearby, without forcing people to do anything, but tell about different initiatives, I don't know, like in Jardin des Plantes, the life of, I don't know, panda or some white bear, and how their lives are impacted by climate change, and some initiatives which exist, or people who don't have water in Nigeria and other things. These examples. And for artificial intelligence as well, questions on ethics, we want to approach them, but maybe we don't know how to approach them. We give this question about who would we prefer to kill, an old woman or a baby, which is not really questions that life usually asks us, but there are much more relevant questions, and people think about them. So I think we should unite also not only with mathematical community, but with other sciences and other
social movements, which will also bring us funds.
Yes. Yeah.
So thanks for your comments. So I fully agree with you. So we need to join a fourth, not only with mathematicians, but the other. And a success, I was running a project the last year called Aqua Steam. So taking water, because about sustainability and so on, it's a very interesting topic. And through that, we put a lot of mathematics also.
I think, yeah, Andreas, no. Can we wrap up? Or you had some comments on that? You okay? Okay, no, because I see the time flying already. And I just wanted to finish this panel to ask you, what about the future? So what do you think needs to be done or has to be done? You know, what are the next steps? And the question for you as well is, what do you want or need from a network? Because the idea is building communities, but why? You know, and the question we're asking you actually is, what would you need from a network? Because I think it really depends from... The answers are going to depend on what the next steps are. Anyone wants to?
I love what Andreas said about formalizing this community and banding together, and perhaps there is strength in numbers, and maybe an exhibition that goes to several institutions around that are represented here around the world. Maybe there would be an easier path to fundraising for something that would have a worldwide impact, and maybe not just here, but in communities that don't even have a hope of a math museum in lesser developed countries, etc. So there might be some impetus to join forces on that. And we would love to be part of that.
From my side, on a more radical future, I would say, I mean, we come from science, so open science has to be a bit top topic, so let's make it open science communication. That's a bit of a strong thing, but let's just start. A lot of funding is public funding, so why should public funding be closed source? That's one future thing. The other one would be, of course, strengthen this culture of exchange and sharing, but then maybe look at certain formats. This is a good format. It's once every 2 years, but maybe we have other formats like a Discord channel or some other formats of exchange where you can just really exchange on a different level and have access to all the information, skills, and experience that we have, and also to include the rest of the world who is more active than the bunch of people we have here, and to include them too in a way.
So, and to add something more, because what they said, I fully agree, is that if we want a strong network, this needs to be strong at a local level and also at a global one. So for the local one, everyone counts. Everyone at this neighborhood, at this math museum, at these school activities, everything counts. And for the global one, it's also important to have like a global view. So what we have been talking about, this web page where we can put a list of everything. So before next step that we are already beginning with, so to have a state of the art, a real picture of what is going on, it's really very helpful. So I would like to encourage everybody to check on the web page of the wiki and to and to spread this to other people that it's not being here now, but also because it's very important to look at our environment, because we are not the only one, and if we work together, we'll be stronger.
So, to conclude about the IHP Endowment Fund, we've just opened 2 Friends Fund, one in the US and the other one in Hong Kong. So we're going to need help, obviously, to expand our network community abroad. But we also have to consolidate our networks in France because of the consequences of the COVID. We have to get back the trust of some companies. That's the main challenges we have, but also with the Maison Poincaré. Once it will be open, we will have new challenges like our new targets, our new strategy for the next 3 years. So thank you for your attention. And I would like just to say that if you want to make a donation again, sorry, it's my job. You have the QR code on this presentation. And thank you so much.
I'll end cap that. You can help MoMath earn some money without making a donation by going to vote.momath.org and voting for us.
And I would just say, let's donate for people to come to this conference, to give them, not for us. So I think we are fine.
And
let me finish thanking. I need to thank Poincaré Institute because we are here, and I think we need to thank now also Andreas and Cindy as the main organizers, and to thank all the participants. So this is not the last activity of this conference, but I think that we have both here, the three, I mean, also a representative and the other people there, so I need to thank everybody again. Thank you.
Yeah, and I thank you all for the very interesting things you said. So if you didn't check the link yet, this is the document where we put all the activities and all the stuff we talked about. If you see things that you know that are not on it, you can edit it, so please add it. Thank you all it was amazing. If you have more questions, because it was really hard to keep an hour for this roundtable. So if you have questions, of course, go see them, and thank you very much.